Welcome to episode 36 of the daily vlog. Today's a little different. Instead of my ugly face, I'm going to be working on a commission for a few minutes. This is a Insecticon commission, and I've got to do all three of them. Some of the things I was thinking about while working on this piece, there's a tendency for me sometimes to want to think, oh, I want this to be really, really as best as I can possibly make it. And sometimes, and I hope I don't knock over the camera while doing this, but sometimes that manifests itself in the being like, I want everything to be as slick as possible, like every line to be perfect, and what happens is I tend to psych myself out and put the piece off, because I've realized over the years that a very slick style, drawing style, now I mean inking style is a little different. When I'm inking someone else, I tend to move the camera around a little bit while I do this. When I'm inking someone else, I can, I tend to be more careful and try to be, especially if the style calls for it to be slick. Like with inking transformers, I try to be as tight as possible. But when I'm drawing my own stuff, whenever I try to be very, very tight and slick and have every line, have super hyper control over every element, every little line, everything, the drawing comes out really kind of stiff. And I know people that are really good artists or really good draftsmen, but when I look at their stuff, I think this is really well drawn, but it doesn't make me want to draw. It looks very technical, but there's just something about no life, or it just needs a little bit of gesture. On the other, and I also know people that are able to pull that life off in a very cartoony kind of style, and it still comes out as very slick, and have a lot of life. So it's a very specific kind of, I guess, drawing style, skill set to have. I don't have that. Part of it may be that I don't find it very fun to do that. So I like being gestural, and I was just thinking about this really, I don't know if this would really count as gestural, this particular drawing, but I'm not being very, I'm not using a lot of guides. I probably will for the circles, because you can't really, faking a circle, it's pretty obvious. But just think about what makes a piece work that's loose. You see, and what makes a piece sloppy. So you see some people that, you see some drawings that are obviously, they seem amateurish, and they, the line, you look at two pieces, like one piece that's gestural that works, and you're like, oh, I love this. It has a lot of energy and it's loose, and then you look at another piece and it just looks sloppy. And I think one of the things I realized is that, that gestural sketchiness or looseness has to sit on something. Like, it has to have a good foundation. So when you think about building a house, you can do all kinds of crazy things with architecture, but you can't do crazy things with the foundation. The foundation has to be solid. So usually when you look at something that's loose and bad, it's not because they're being loose necessarily. It's because the foundation isn't there for that gestural and that energy to sit on. It has to rest on something. So when you have an artist that is really sketchy, sketchy or loose and gestural, but it works, it's, I think, because their foundation is solid, like the perspective, form, they've worked out the composition, the layout, the anatomy. Even if they're being exaggerated with the anatomy, if you stripped it down, that would be solid. And that has to be the foundation that things sit on, and the sketchiness and looseness sit on. If it doesn't, it just looks sloppy. I think that's why it works. I mean, I still am trying to figure out things myself and why things work and why things don't work. And like this weekend, I don't know if you saw the piece. I'm trying not to knock the camera over as I do this. Some of the Transformer pieces I did at the show, I was happy with the way they turned out. And I realized I was very, like, I was being very loose. Like, there was no pressure. I was just trying to have fun, do something fun and entertain myself and have something to sell. And if it didn't work, so what? I'd just tear it up and start over. But when I was looking at the finished piece, I was like, that actually really works. And it looks like I put more thought and energy into it than I really did. And I think it's because I worked out the, like I said, the foundation first. And that's kind of what I'm doing with this one. And two, it's like with the line work, like I'll erase the pencils. I'm using a very thin pen to go over first, because once I finish with this, I'm going to go over with marker and I'm going to color it in, and then that will help further define forms and planes and things. And then over that, I'll do thicker, I'll go over the lines and just thicken up some lines like here and the outlines and define some of the form. But I'm not so much worried. Like, I used to fall in this trap all the time of really making like, oh, this line's got to be perfect, and line weights and everything. And I think the overall effect is what I'm going for more so than the individual lines. So there's, for what I do in my penciling, in inking, when I'm doing the complete art. Like I said, if I'm inking someone else, that's a different story. But anyway, just some thoughts on drawing and gesture and all that. So that'll do it for today. I'll see you all next time.